Unveiling the insane timeline of revelations, what you need to know right now. In a sleepy town where whispers dance on the wind and shadows lurk in every corner, a chilling series of events began to unfold one fateful night. It started with a flickering street lamp and a blood-curdling scream echoing through the silence. The night was alive, electric with tension, the kind that makes your heart race and sweat bead on your forehead. Nobody knew that the eerie glow cast by that broken lamp would soon illuminate the darkest secrets buried in their small community. People couldn't help but talk. They gathered at the diner, eyes wide, hushed voices mixing with the clattering of silverware and sizzling of bacon. "Did you hear?" Old Mrs. Jenkins saw, one would say before being interrupted by another. "What about the lights in the old mill?" They flickered like someone was watching. Suspicion rolled like a heavy fog, creeping into their minds, wrapping around their thoughts, suffocating them. Stories flew like wildfire. Strange faces lurking behind windows, flickers of movement just out of sight. What were they hiding? As dawn approached, the revelations grew weirder. Lights continued to turn on and off throughout the night in eerie synchronization. An unwilling witness claimed he saw a figure wearing a long, tattered coat slip past the abandoned warehouse just blocks away. Bile rose in the throat of every local as they faced the possibility that something sinister had taken root in their hometown. Was it merely a figment of their imagination, or were they staring down the abyss? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Just when it seemed nothing could possibly get stranger, the skies darkened, and a low rumble surged through the air. It felt like an unholy promise as a lone figure emerged from the shadows, a face concealed under a hood. Footsteps echoed ominously against the pavement, barely heard over the fast-beating pulses of anxious hearts. The town held its breath. What had come to their doorstep? And would they ever learn the truth behind the nightmare that gripped their streets? The figure paused, the hood obscuring their features, casting a long shadow on the cracked pavement. The tension in the air thickened, and the murmurs in the diner faded into nervous silence. Eyes strained to see what lay beneath that dark shroud. Then it happened. A scream cut through the stillness. A teenage girl bolted from the back of the diner, her eyes wide, breaths ragged, as if she had just seen the devil himself. "It's coming!" she shouted, panic screeching in her voice. A wave of fear swept over the townsfolk like a gust of wind tearing through the trees. "What does she mean?" someone whispered. The figure shifted, seemingly aware of the growing crowd, and stepped forward, the faint glow of a nearby street lamp illuminating the edges of a long, tattered coat. The air crackled with energy, and in that moment, everyone felt it, a chill that snagged on their skin, leaving unease settling like dread in their chests. One brave soul, Tom, a burly construction worker with fists like hammers, took a hesitant step toward the figure. "Who are you?" he demanded, though his voice trembled slightly. "What do you want?" The hooded figure remained silent, but the intensity of their presence spoke volumes. With a sweeping gesture, they pointed towards the old mill, its rusted roof silhouetted against the clouded moon. The crowd shivered as dread settled deeper. What resided in that forgotten place? Just then, a low growl echoed from the shadows behind the figure. A dog, scruffy and wild-eyed, stepped from the darkness, its teeth bared, snarling warningly at the hooded figure. It seemed to sense something the townsfolk could not. The atmosphere thickened, leaving stomachs churning and hearts pounding. "Get inside!" someone yelled. The diner erupted in movement, a tide of bodies rushing for safety as panic took hold, but Tom stood firm. "Wait! We need to know what's going on. Help us!" he called, surprising even himself at his defiance. The hooded figure hesitated, a moment stretched into eternity, breath held tight in anxious chests everywhere. In an abrupt motion, the figure threw back the hood, revealing a face, the face of a woman, aged yet fierce, with stormy eyes that flashed with an otherworldly glow. The crowd gasped collectively. She was not only a stranger, she bore the mark of someone burdened by truths too heavy to carry. "You think you're alone, don't you?" Her voice resonated, low and commanding, breaking through the fear. "You have no idea what you're really dealing with." Gasps escaped based on surprise and realization. What did she mean? Everyone had their suspicions, but now the truth seemed to hang delicately, waiting to drop. Tom opened his mouth to speak, but the moment was shattered. The earth rumbled beneath their feet. Windows rattled, and the sky illuminated in a brief flash of light. Silence swallowed the crowd whole, leaving nothing but the heavy thudding of heartbeats echoing in the darkness. Then, just as swiftly, the light faded, leaving the residents standing frozen, eyes glued to the old mill, now appearing to seem as though it was suddenly alive with dread gnawing at their souls. They realized, the shadows were just the beginning. The darkness was clawing its way into their lives, and there was no turning back. A slow, sinister smile crept across the woman's face. It has begun. What had they awakened? What truths lay hidden in the depths of that mill? The question hung thick in the air as they braced for a confrontation that beckoned from beyond the shadows. The crowd was paralyzed. Eyes darted, whispers turned to silent stares, and hearts ached with fear. Tom could feel the cool night air biting at him, heavy with the tension of unrealized dread. He glanced at the old mill, its decrepit structure now pulsating with an energy that pulled at the core of the town's unease. "What do you mean, it has begun?" he finally managed to ask. The woman stepped closer, those stormy eyes searching the depths of his. "It lives," she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "What slumbers there is far older than all of you. It was sealed away, but now..." A deafening crack echoed, slicing through the night. The mill's wooden beams creaked ominously, protesting against a force unseen. The dog barked, a sharp cry that echoed with primal fear, before retreating into the shadows from which it had emerged. As if sensing the horror unfolding, the woman continued, her voice gaining strength, "You must act quickly. It will not wait for answers. It senses fear, and it thrives on it. What are we supposed to do?" A voice shouted from the back, panic rising. "How do we stop it?" A thrumming roar sounded from the direction of the mill as Vis and Hale's new vibration reverberated through the ground, shaking their bones and rattling the windows of the diner. The air thickened, electrified, and filled with a tension so palpable it was as if the world itself was holding its breath. "Gather those who will listen," the woman commanded, "and prepare yourselves. You need to face what you have awakened, or it will consume you." Tom's mind raced. For a moment, he stood there, the weight of a decision hanging over him like a storm cloud. Did he truly understand what they were about to confront? Was he brave enough to embrace the dangers that lurked beyond the threshold? As he looked into the eyes of the townsfolk, he saw a mix of confusion, anger, and fear. Their lives had been simple until this night. His heart thudded loud in his chest. He took a deep breath, feeling the tightness tendril around his throat. "I'll do it," he declared, surprising even himself. "Whatever it takes, I'll fight." "Very few will withstand this darkness," she said, nodding somberly. "But if you are willing to stand firm, trust in each other. That will be your strength, for alone, you will falter." As the roar of the mill intensified, shadows danced at its edges, almost beckoning the townsfolk to approach. That ancient structure whispered promises of power, danger, and profound secrets. Staring into the abyss, Tom felt the call gnawing at him, an instinct begging him to rush closer, to uncover whatever lay in the dark, but he also felt the pull to the woman, a connection that transcended the immediate terror suffocating them all. "Tell me more," he urged, stepping forward, determination brewing like a storm inside him. In those moments of eye contact, she acknowledged his resolve. "The choice to plunge into the unknown is never easy," she murmured, then turned toward the mill once more. "Once you unlock the truths hidden within, there is no turning back. But the fate of this town relies on what you discover, and what you're willing to sacrifice." With that ominous caution ringing in their ears, the ground trembled again, this time with an urgency that demanded action. Neither the townsfolk nor the woman had any idea what awaited them inside the mill, but the whisper of destiny loomed, ready to unfold. Would Tom gather his strength and lead his community into the depths of madness? Or would they succumb to the shadows? Their future hung in the balance, Teetering precariously on the edge of the knife that was slowly being uncovered, the air pulsed with an unrelenting rhythm as they stepped forward, hearts racing, voices firm with resolve. But what awaited them behind those rotting doors might forever change their lives if they survived long enough to confront it. The heavy silence hung in the air as Tom and the townsfolk took a collective step toward the mill. Each heartbeat echoed in his ears, a drumming that intensified with every inch they drew closer to the dark entrance. Shadows flickered along the weathered walls, painting eerie shapes that twisted and turned in the dim light. "Stay together," Tom called, though his voice trembled. It was almost laughable how his words carried the weight of both valor and fear. The townsfolk filed in behind him, a mix of reluctant bravado and sheer terror, each glance toward the mill igniting old whispers of horror. The doorway loomed before them, gaping like a mouth hungry for their fear. A faint feeling of dread settled in the pit of his stomach, but he pushed it aside, determined not to show weakness. He turned back, attempting a rallying smile that faltered at the edges. "We can do this," he shouted, honestly praying his voice could mask the tremors of doubt within. As they crossed the threshold into the mill, the air turned colder, wrapping around them like a shroud. The surroundings were fetid with the smell of decay and something else, an acrid stench of rot that clung to the walls, invading their senses. He could hear his friends' soft gasps, their breaths coming in short, frantic bursts. "Where do we go?" a woman whispered nearby, her voice almost lost in the oppressive atmosphere. Tom's throat tightened. It was all-encompassing darkness wrapped in shadows, and the pulse of something ancient throbbed beneath their feet. "Follow me," he urged, stepping further into the blackness. Each footfall felt heavy, as if the floor itself sought to drag them down. His heart raced, wild as terror swirled within him. Suddenly, an unholy noise sliced through the quiet, a low growl that vibrated through the very bones of the mill. The sound crawled along the walls, echoing in the cavernous space, radiating a fear that felt alive. The townsfolk froze, eyes wide, bodies tense like coiled springs ready to snap. "What was that?" someone muttered, panic clawing through the whisper. Tom turned, trying to read their expressions. They were all shadows of their former selves, the weight of fear marring their resolve. "It's just the wind," he tried, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him, but the woman appeared at his side, her stormy gaze locking onto his once more. "It's not the wind," she said slowly, as if letting the truth seep into their consciousness. "It is waking up." A skittering noise echoed behind them like claws on wood. Tom's breath caught as he spun around. The mill seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the shadows pooling and rising at odd angles, forming grotesque shapes that danced just out of reach of the sputtering light from his flashlight. "We have to keep moving," Tom urged, gripping the flashlight tighter as they pressed deeper in, a sense of urgency thrumming in his veins. The surroundings twisted into a labyrinth of decay, a once productive structure now turned mausoleum. "And no," a voice shouted, and Tom turned to see one of the men falter, eyes wide and filled with burgeoning panic. "We can't go further. We shouldn't have come here." But it was too late. An unseen force pulsed around them. The shadows intensified, coiling like serpents, and suddenly the air felt charged, electric with dread. The realization hit him as the ground rumbled beneath their feet, a sign of a damning truth drawing closer. "Stick together. We can't let it divide us," Tom shouted, fighting back the encroaching despair. Then the wall beside them buckled, splinters flying as if struck by an unseen hand. An explosion of darkness poured through the breach, swallowing the light hole, and with it, he felt the hope in his chest begin to desiccate. "No!" he screamed, heart racing as the void consumed everything before him. But amidst the darkness, a flicker of light caught his eye, a glimmer of something not entirely hopeless. Had they awakened the darkness? Or was their salvation hidden within? As terror wrapped around them, Tom understood one thing: the true fight was just beginning. And in that moment of panic, something shifted within him, igniting a hunger for answers that surged above the dread. What lay ahead could either redeem them or plunge them into oblivion. Either way, the answer waited in the heart of the mill, and danger was their only constant companion. "Do we dare?" he whispered under his breath, standing on the precipice of destiny, teetering between fear and courage. But before he could move, a chilling whisper dripped from the darkness, lingering like smoke. "Join us or perish." The choice was near, and the mill held secrets that threatened to unravel everything they knew. Tom stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. Each breath felt heavier, thick with dread. "Join us or perish," the whisper danced around him, wrapping him in its sinister embrace. The words echoed in his mind, infusing him with a mix of terror and curiosity. What could join mean in this context? The atmosphere shifted, it was almost tangible, like a living thing, heavy with anticipation. The townsfolk shifted uneasily, their eyes darting to one another, searching for reassurance that was nowhere to be found. A few of them were edging back, retreating toward the safety of the mill's entrance, their fear overriding the sense of unity Tom had tried to foster. "No! Don't go back!" he shouted, reaching out as if he could grasp hold of their courage. "We have to face whatever this is together." But one man, shaking with fear, took one more step back, blinding fear flickering across his face. "Tom, it's not right. We shouldn't be here." His voice cracked under the strain. "Then where do we go?" Tom demanded, the panic palpable in his own voice. "We can't just leave." Before the man could answer, the shadows surrounding them surged forward, dark tendrils reaching eagerly like fingers toward the fleeing townsfolk. The air thickened, squeezing Tom's chest in a vice of terror. The oppressive darkness felt alive, hungry. "Run!" Someone screamed, and in an instant, chaos erupted as people scrambled toward the entrance. The milling crowd dissolved into a frenzy, a tide of fear that rushed past Tom, nearly knocking him over. He caught sight of the woman, her fierce eyes surveying the chaos, her face set in determination. "Tom! We need to go!" she cried, grabbing his arm. "There's something in here with us. We can't let it separate us." He nodded, instinct kicking in. His flashlight beam zigzagged wildly, illuminating distorted shapes in the corners of the room. The walls seemed to breathe with a monstrous rhythm, and the air hummed with an energy that made every hair on his body stand on end. Then an unholy roar emanated from the shadows, a sound that resonated deep within them, carving a rift of terror that froze them in place. "Stay close!" Tom yelled, ushering the remaining townsfolk toward a side passage he glimpsed dimly illuminated by the flashlight. They were boxed in, a horde of shadows looming closer with each thunderous heartbeat. "Here!" he pointed, racing toward the corridor. The woman followed, pulling others along as fear galvanized them. They flooded into the space, shoving against the damp walls, desperate to escape the grasping darkness. "What is that thing?" one of the men gasped, his face pale. "What did we wake? Does it matter? We need to get out!" Tom shouted, adrenaline surging. Each person in the group felt the weight of their mortality pressing down on them, a visceral reminder that they might not escape this time. Suddenly, the corridor shuddered violently. Long lines of crack formed above, dust raining down like shattered dreams. The light from Tom's flashlight illuminated a curious chandelier swaying from the ceiling, revealing twisted faces embedded in the wood, faces contorted in agony. "Keep moving!" Tom urged as the walls groaned, ancient wood splintering in protest. The ground felt unstable beneath their feet, and with each step, a sense of impending doom nested tightly in their chests. As they hurried through the corridor, wisps of fog coiled around their ankles, pulling them back into the darkness. Whispers filled the air again, more insistent, promising power, secrets, and knowledge at a price. "Don't listen! Don't look!" Tom shouted, panic lending urgency to his voice. He caught the woman's gaze, her determination mixing with fear, and they made a silent vow to push through together. An exit loomed ahead, a faint glimmer of daylight cutting through an opening. But when they reached it, an unnatural force clamped down like a vice. The door shuddered, resisting their push, and a sound filled the space, a low, throaty laughter rolling from the depths of the mill, taunting them. They were not leaving that easily, Thomas' mind raced. They had awoken something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. What lay behind them was pure darkness, while ahead was a chance to escape if they could only break through. "Let us push!" he shouted, channeling his fear into anger and resolve. The townsfolk rallied behind him, digging deep to find the strength they needed. But as they pressed forward, the figure of something monstrous took form in the shadows, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The air snapped with energy, and their hopes crashed into despair once more. What do you desire? It growled, a voice scraping against reality itself, echoing their fears and their destinies. What terror awaited them on the other side? Everything, Tom replied, his heart racing as he faced the creature manifesting from the shadows. Its massive form towered before them, eyes gleaming like molten gold. The air crackled with an electric vibrancy, sharp enough to split open their senses. Together we can join, it hissed, the voice dripping with malice. Each word scaled their skin, igniting something deep within, a prickling sense of dread that made Tom want to flee. Yet he stood frozen, caught between the two choices that loomed before him: join the entity or resist it. The townsfolk behind him quaked in terror. He could feel their weaknesses, their doubts flashing like signals in the chaos. Am I being brave or foolish? The question gnawed at him, turning his stomach into knots. Tom! The woman called, fear pulling her voice tight. We can't just stand here. We need to make a choice or we'll die. Joining it could mean losing ourselves. He shouted back, his voice steadying as urgency coursed through him. Don't give in. Tom locked eyes with the woman, channeling every ounce of determination he had. There was strength in numbers, in unity. The creature began to inch closer, its movements hauntingly fluid. Power awaits you, it crooned, tendrils of darkness reaching out aggressively, beckoning with promises too tempting to ignore. The force of its presence wrapped around them, pressing against their minds like a vice. Let us go! A man shouted, crawling toward the light at the doorway. In response, the shadows writhed, and barrier after barrier formed, trapping them within the corridor-esque grip. Push back! Gather your strength! Tom bellowed. He surged forward, gathering the townsfolk around him, creating a shield against the entity's grasp. His flashlight flickered, casting a desperate glow on the fear-stricken faces of his friends and neighbors. One of the townsfolk, a burly man named Greg, roared back, together. We press on. He lunged toward the exit, the others clinging to the rallying cry, their spirit igniting within the darkness like a spark in the night. Now! Tom shouted, straining against the door, shoving the decorative metal with all his might. The laughter intensified, echoing madly around them, as if the mill itself found amusement in their struggle. But as they pressed, the shadows sent a searing jolt through the air. Greg stumbled, pain flickering across his features. Hold on. Keep going. He gasped, pushing past a wave of suffering. Then, in the chaos, Tom glimpsed something, a glimpse of what might lie beyond. The sun. It hung like a beacon beyond the door, offering the warmth of freedom. With renewed vigor, he threw his body against the door, a primal scream erupting from deep within. The door began to crack open, daylight spilling across the ground like a torrent of molten gold. The shadows shrieked, a symphony of tortured souls crashing against their newfound hope. Keep pushing! They shouted as one, fear morphing into blind hope. The entity roared, its monstrous face twisting in rage, revealing rows of teeth sharper than knives. As the door swung wide, an unrelenting pull beckoned them into the light. But just before they could cross the threshold, the creature's voice boomed one last time, your fate is sealed, you can never escape. And with that, Tom and the town were cast into the blinding light, wondering if they had truly broken free, or if they had merely entered a new nightmare. What awaited them beyond the door, a sanctuary or a deception? The real horror felt closer than it ever had before. As Tom burst through the door, he felt the searing heat of sunlight wash over him, sharp and inviting. The townsfolk followed closely, hands clasping tightly against one another as they tumbled into the open air. But instead of the warm embrace of safety, they were met with an eerie, twisted landscape, a deserted park bathed in a surreal, golden glow but devoid of life. Where are we? Whispered the woman who had first urged him to act, her voice tremulous and broken. Tom turned to her, trying to catch a glimpse of hope in her eyes, but found only despair reflected back at him. I don't know. The park's trees loomed like silent sentinels, their leaves shimmering like shards of glass under the harsh light. A soft breeze rustled through, whispering secrets of a world that felt deeply wrong. There was something unsettling in the air, a dissonance that not only rattled their nerves but sunk like lead into their stomachs. Is this real? Greg asked, his face pale and eyes wide, glancing around as if expecting the creature to leap out from behind the trees. Whatever it is, stay close. Tom barked, gripping the flashlight like a lifeline. He shined it around, scanning for symbols, traps, anything that could lead them to a way out. But the only thing that met his gaze were shadows that danced mockingly just beyond the edges of the light, and then it happened. From the depths of the park, laughter echoed, haunting and high-pitched, sending chills racing down their spines. A figure emerged, cloaked in tattered rags, eyes glowing with a contradictory mix of mirth and malice. "Welcome, welcome," it sang, the voice curling around them like smoke. "You've made it. But the game has just begun." "What game?" Tom shot back, tightening his grip on Greg's shoulder. The figure danced in circles, feet barely touching the ground. "The path of truth. Only a few will find their way home. The rest," it shot them a grin that chilled Tom to his core, "will face the echoes of their own wickedness." Tom felt the weight of those words bearing down on him. Could they have traded one nightmare for another? Doubts gnawed at him as the shadows shifted, creeping closer as if they could smell fear. "Don't listen," he shouted, forcing himself forward. "We have to stick together. There must be a way out." The creature only giggled, tilting its head as if Tom were a particularly entertaining animal. "Together?" Oh, they all screamed that at first. But betrayal lingers behind every smile. "Let us see how far your bravery can truly take you." As if on cue, the park transformed. Paths branched off into the depths, a maze of twisted trees and whispers beckoning them down various darkened routes. Each seemed equally uncertain, equally treacherous. "Which way?" someone cried out, panic layering their voice. "Just hold on," Tom pleaded, glancing toward the shifting shadows, their paces quickening, as if the entity played with their minds. "Find a path that feels right." They grasped hands, forming a chain, each person digging deep for the courage to move forward. Tom felt the weight of that collective determination, but also the heavy reality of what they faced, a choice between paths they could neither see nor understand. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, fissures cracking apart, like the earth itself disapproving of their decision. The haunting laughter rang louder, echoing in the depths of the park. "Time to choose," the figure sang, eyes glinting with merciless delight as the edges of their world started to dissolve into darkness. "Stick close," Tom shouted, taking a leap of faith toward the path closest to him. But as they ran, uncertainty hung in the air, thick and suffocating. What lay ahead, escape or doom? With the shadows closing in, their frantic race to find the truth had only just begun. But would they discover salvation, or was the true horror still lurking in the depths of the unknown? The path twisted and turned, branches clawing at their clothes as Tom and the others charged into the unknown. Each step felt heavy, weighed down by the menace that lurked at their backs. The disembodied laughter still echoed, ringing in their ears like a grim lullaby, coaxing them deeper into shadows that rippled with unnatural energy. "Why is this happening?" cried out Janet, her voice trembling as she stumbled over a gnarled root. "We didn't do anything." "The game," Tom replied, his eyes scanning for any kind of sign. "The figure said something about echoes." Panic tinged his voice. He could feel it creeping in, clawing at his resolve. What had they awakened? It felt like they were trapped in a cruel jest, each wrong turn leading them further away from sanity. The earth shook again, and this time, it felt like a heartbeat, a pulsing reminder of something ancient and angry below. "Everyone, stay focused. We need to." The ground split again, this time beneath one of the women. She screamed as the earth swallowed her whole, her hands reaching desperately for help. In an instant, she was gone, leaving nothing but a faint echo. Tom's heart pounded in his chest as he whipped around, grabbing hold of those closest to him. "Run!" he shouted, dragging Greg and Janet along as he plunged down another path, heart racing in sync with the tremors. They rushed through, breathless and frantic, trying to drown out the horror of what they'd just witnessed. But the path was narrowing, closing in as if the forest itself had come alive, no longer a mere backdrop but a living, breathing entity intent on swallowing them whole. Shadows darted between the trees, whispering accusations, sowing doubt. "No! No!" Greg gasped, stumbling, his voice rising in pitch. "I can't keep moving." Tom screamed, feeling the surge of desperation rise within him. Don't look back. They burst onto a clearing bathed in that overwhelming golden light. Its beauty felt like a cruel trick, an illusion masking the darkness that lay just beyond the trees. In the center of the clearing stood an ornate pedestal, shimmering with a faint light, beckoning them forward. On it rested a glass orb that pulsed like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the laughter returned, more sinister, stronger. "Ah, dear travelers," the gargled voice teased from the shadows, "you've come to seek answers, have you? Touch the orb, and it may reveal your fate. But beware, for the truth is a double-edged sword." Tom hesitated, dread gnawing in his gut. Was this the truth they sought, or something darker? The last woman's face flashed in his mind, her desperation echoing in the silence. What did he have to lose? "Tom, don't," Janet urged, clutching his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "What if it's a trap? Learning the truth might be our only way out." He brushed her off, a rush of determination coursing through him. As he reached for the orb, the laughter morphed into cries that pierced the air, like the wails of the lost. The shadows quivered, thickening and congealing, coiling around them like serpents ready to strike. The orb ignited suddenly, bathing them in a blinding light. Images swirled within faces of those who had vanished, twisted in a moment of tragic realization. Memories they shared flashed like snapshots, interwoven with dark interpretations of their past actions. Tom Gregg whispered, backing away. "What if we can't handle this?" But already, the weight of the truth bore down upon them. The warmth of hope was beginning to turn cold. "Tom, we need to," but the ground buckled again, this time with a violent rage. Cracks snaked across the clearing, and the sound of tearing fabric filled the air like reality was unraveling thread by agonizing thread. "Choose now." The figure's voice cackled through the chaos, mingling with their fears. "What will you do with the truths you uncover?" In that moment of uncertainty, the shadow surged forward, and the orb flickered dangerously. Would they step forward into enlightenment, or would they be consumed by their own darkness? As the world twisted into chaos, Tom realized that some truths could deepen the shadows, obscuring the light forever. What lay ahead would either forge their freedom or seal their fate. Would they unravel the secrets that bound them, or would the eerie laughter be their last memory? Tom's fingers brushed the cool surface of the orb, and in that fleeting contact, the pulse intensified. A jolt surged through him, igniting every nerve ending, drawing him deeper into a vortex of memories and shadows. His heart raced in a frantic rhythm, echoing the tremors from the ground beneath. Images flashed before his eyes, moments stolen from the corners of his mind, each one an intact shard of the past, now twisted and distorted. "Let go!" Janet screamed, dragging at his arm with desperate strength. But he was anchored to the orb, ensnared by its raw energy. The ground convulsed around them. Greg stumbled backward, fear etching deeper into his features, eyes wide, reflecting horror and disbelief. "What is happening?" Greg's voice trembled, quaking like the earth itself. "It's showing us." Tom managed to gasp, fighting against the pull of the ethereal light. Yet, the images held an urgency, revealing their collective memories but through a dark lens, a lens that magnified their failures, regrets, and the shadowy echoes of their choices. "Can't you see? This isn't just our past, it's what we buried." Janet's voice was a whisper now, barely piercing through the chaos, but heavy with dread. Without warning, the laughter reached a deafening peak, drowning out their thoughts, overwhelming their senses. The shadows pulsed, encircling them as if they were part of a living creature, breathing and hungry, ready to devour anything that dared intrude. "Make it stop!" Greg yelled, collapsing to his knees, hands pressed against his ears as if that could silence the cacophony. In that chaotic flurry, the orb flickered violently, morphing from light to darkness, blinding Tom momentarily. He felt the grip of the world's weight, pulling him down until he could barely breathe. And then, there it was, a face among the swirling mist, that of the woman who had been lost. Her eyes bore into him, wide and pleading, filled with unspeakable pain. "Help," she mouthed, the sound lost within the chaos. Tom staggered back, gasping for control, the truth of what they had awakened slamming into him like a physical blow. "Do you dare engage with the shadows of your past?" The figure's voice echoed, dripping with malice. "Each truth comes at a cost." He could feel the orb releasing raw energy, forcing him to confront the reality of their shared torment. Tom's chest tightened as memories crashed over him like waves. Failed friendships, betrayals, and the truths they had ignored screamed to be recognized. He struggled to retake control, pulling away from its relentless grip. "I choose to fight," he declared, his voice hoarse yet invigorated by a sudden surge of defiance. If they were going to face their destinies, they couldn't be passive victims. They had to reclaim their narrative.
"Tom, what are you doing?"
Greg's voice was childlike, a plea layered with disbelief. Facing it head-on, he shot back, a determination forming like steel in his veins. It was time to confront the shadows that had followed them, time to delve into the very depths of their own darkness.
The laughter morphed into something else, an eerie cacophony, blending with the terrifying power of the orb vibrating around him.
"Your choice is foolish," the voice slithered into his consciousness, a cold whisper weaving through every thought.
"Don't let it consume you,"
Janet cried desperately, her eyes darting between Tom and the shifting shadows. "Together," he urged, looking into the frightened eyes of his friends. "We have to decide, or we'll be lost forever." And as the ground tore itself apart one last time, swallowing what remained of the clearing, they felt an inexplicable pull, the need to weave their choices with grace or risk falling into the abyss. What awaited them on the other side could either shatter or reclaim their lives, but would they emerge united or fragmented beyond repair? Darkness loomed before them, ready to consume whatever remnants of light they had left. The moment hung suspended in time, and as they approached the fragile edge of choice, they knew that whatever decision they made next would
irrevocably change them. A deep rumble filled the air, shaking their resolve. Would they withstand the revelation, or be tragically transformed by their own revelations? As the ground began to shift again, a new question emerged: could they handle the darkness threatening to envelope them, or would they flee into the sanctuary of ignorance? Tom's heart pounded wildly in his chest as he braced himself against the swirling shadows that encircled them like hungry wolves. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, he grasped Janet and Greg's hands. Despite their quivering fingers, there was a strength in their unity that ignited a flicker of hope within him. "We can face this," he declared, voice steady, cutting through the laughter and chaos. "We can confront the shadows together." The shadows flickered, seeming to pulse with interest, yet laughter echoed mockingly in response. "Will you stand your ground, or will you cower in the truth?" Gripping the orb tighter, Tom felt its energy leak into him like an electric current. He envisioned everything they had buried under layers of fear and denial, the secrets that loomed over them, the pain they had been too afraid to address. "We won't let the darkness consume us," he shouted, his voice rising above the din. "We will face what is ours." With a fierce resolve, he placed his hand on the orb, jolting with searing energy that rippled through the air. Light surged forth, illuminating the clearing like a beacon, subduing the shadows as they shrieked in fury, twisting and writhing away from the new power that radiated from him. "Together, all of us," he implored, beckoning the townsfolk to rally. The group tightened around him, their fingers laced together. Fear started to lose its grip. "Let it reflect what is true," Janet added, her voice strengthening, a lighting hope among the group as she stepped up beside Tom. "The shadows thrive on our fear, but our connection can shield us. The truth will set us free." More pairs of hands joined theirs, forming a chain that glowed brighter as the weight of their collective fear merged into the light of their truths. The orb responded violently, glowing hotter, but rather than it burning, it acted like a shield against the encroaching darkness. The echoes of laughter twisted, turning into cries that morphed into something deeper, a longing for the light. "No! You are not allowed!" the figure shrieked, unleashing an unholy sound. The shadows surged forward, determined to snuff out their growing flame. "Push it back!" Tom shouted, eyes wide with determination. The orb pulsed again, and they felt the dreamlike energy of shared history wrap around them. Memories washed over them, not just darkness but moments of love, forgiveness, and strength, everything that had made them who they were. "I am not afraid," Greg shouted, his voice booming as his determination crystallized. "I refuse to be separated from who I am. I fought for my family, I fight for them again." Tears streamed down his face, but they were tears of resolve, of understanding. The entity recoiled as their resolve solidified, and the shadow shrieked, unraveling under the radiance of their collective truths.
The orb exploded into a shower of vibrant light, spraying the clearing with warmth that surged through their bones like spring rain on parched earth. Together! They all cried in unison, their voices weaving into a tapestry of hope and fortitude. The shadows, recoiling, dissolved into nothingness, revealing vivid landscapes filled with life, trees bursting with flowers, the sun shining bright. Then it happened. The ground beneath them settled, the chaos falling silent. They stood in awe, looking around at what had just been unveiled before them. In the distance, a familiar town emerged, serene yet vibrant, filled with laughter and activity. "Is this home?" A voice trembled in the newfound calm. "It has always been," the woman beside Tom whispered, her face illuminated by the sunlight streaming around them. "This is the truth, our town, free from the shadows that once clouded our vision. Together, we have reclaimed our future." Tom took a deep breath, relief flooding his body. They had not only faced their fears but emerged stronger, bound together by a shared purpose. They turned to see the members of their community recognizing one another, the pain of their past slowly lifting. "This is our moment," Tom said, glancing lovingly at Janet and Greg. "No fear anymore. Only connection that will guide us forward." Laughter bubbled through the clearing, the vibrant atmosphere washing over them, binding them into a tight-knit community once again. As they weaved back toward their town, hands still laced together, they looked forward excited and cautiously optimistic about what lay ahead, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, bathed in hues of crimson and gold, a new story was just beginning, free of shadows that once loomed over them. As the warmth enveloped them, the weight of the past faded away, leaving behind the radiant hope of a new dawn. Now don't forget, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel for more incredible stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It helps us bring more stories to life. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I'm dying to hear what you all think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your support means the world.